Behind me is one of the most famous airplanes in history. In the early years of World War II, German U-boats were sinking hundreds of Allied ships, ships that were transporting troops, vital materials, and critical war machines to the European front. Many of these were Liberty ships, a prolific class of cargo vessels. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States built 2,710 Liberty ships, an average of 3 every 2 days. And the reason for this mass production was directly tied to the fact that German submarines were sinking them nearly as fast as we could make them. Over the course of the conflict, the Germans sank 3,500 merchant ships and 175 warships. Henry J. Kaiser, a Liberty shipbuilder, knew that something radical was required to stem the tide. What if, instead of using boats to transport men and material, the Allies used planes? Very big planes. In 1942, Kaiser partnered with Howard Hughes, America's leading aircraft designer, as well as a business tycoon, film producer, and all-around eccentric playboy. Together, they conceived of a flying cargo ship capable of carrying 150,000 pounds. That's 400 troops, or multiple 30-ton M4 Sherman tanks. They went through numerous concepts, including a twin-hull variation, before finally settling on the final design. The result was the largest aircraft ever built at the time, 6 times larger than the next largest aircraft. At 219 feet long and 79 feet tall, it was higher than a 5-story building. Its 321-foot wingspan was longer than an American football field. There was just one problem. Because of the war, strategic materials like aluminum and steel were in short supply, and the Hughes H-4 Hercules, as this was officially known, was going to need a lot of them. In the end, it was entirely made out of wood, earning it the nickname the Flying Lumberyard. The only bits not wood were the 8 Pratt & Whitney engines, the cockpit electronics, and the screws bolting it all together. You probably know this behemoth by its other name, the Spruce Goose, despite the fact that it was mostly made of laminated birch. I guess nothing rhymed with birch. The Goose ran wildly over budget at $23 million, well over $250 million in 2023 dollars. And the sheer size of the plane, the difficulty in wrangling materials, and Hughes's perfectionistic nature caused massive production delays. In fact, World War II ended more than 2 years before the plane would ever be tested. By that time, very few people thought that the prototype was even capable of flight. But on November 2nd, 1947, with Howard Hughes at the controls, the Spruce Goose was extracted from its hangar, placed into Los Angeles Harbor, taxied across the water, and lifted off, remaining airborne for just half a minute and traveled roughly a mile at a height of just 25 feet.
Now Hughes is at the controls as the 8 engines roar and the ship gets going. He remembers how, at the Senate hearing, he made this dramatic declaration.
I put the sweat of my life into this thing. I have my reputation rolled up in it. And I have stated several times that if it's a failure, I'll probably leave this country and never come back, and I mean it.
These tests now being carried out were intended to be no more than runs on the surface. Presently, Hughes opened her up, apparently just to find out if it felt as if she would lift from the water. Then, as one of our cameramen was filming the scene, Hughes evidently changed his mind and decided on a takeoff. He flew her just above the water for about a mile, and I'll bet that gave the millionaire pilot one of the biggest thrills in a lifetime full of thrilling adventures.
That was its first and only flight. With the war over, the plane was no longer needed. No further tests were run, nor were any other planes manufactured. For 72 years, the Spruce Goose was the largest plane on the planet. Today, only one aircraft has a longer wingspan, the twin fuselage scaled composites Stratolaunch, designed to carry and launch rockets into low Earth orbit, which had its first flight in 2019. The Spruce Goose still holds the record for the largest seaplane, the largest wooden aircraft, and the largest propeller plane ever built. The Hughes Aircraft Company kept the Goose until 1980, when it was put on display next to the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. Today, it resides at the Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum, just outside Portland, Oregon. The former Hughes hangar where the Goose rested for 3/4 of a century before being reintroduced to the public was converted into a soundstage where numerous movies, including Titanic and Avatar, were filmed. Today, it looks like this, and is home to Google. Stay curious, my friends.